Chat. RLCS starts on Friday already. Kind of crazy, right? The fact that it's only been, what, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and we're back into the RLCS. We got open qualifiers on Friday. We've got invitationals on Friday. We've got Swiss and everything starting up. And then a week later, on the 7th, we've got closed. We got Regional 1. It's kind of nuts. And it got me thinking, right? It got me thinking about the RLCS season. Is it too short? Is it too long? Is there not enough breaks for these players? Is there going to be a problem? Because there's a couple things that have happened recently in other esports. Valorant just announced that they are going to franchising. They increased the age to 17 and put in a grandfather clause for their younger players. Something I'm not actually too opposed of. Players that are at least this age and are qualified to play from previous seasons, but everybody moving forward has to be at least 17. I'm like, okay, that's something that I don't mind. You saw Counter-Strike a couple of years back after having a crazy amount of tournaments. Everybody banded together and was like, hey, we have to have at least 3 months off. This is ridiculous. There's not enough time. We have to have this much time off. You're starting to see, you know, a lot of things in other esports come together because of how grueling these open circuit constant go, go, go is. Because even though there's going to be downtime, and I'll talk about that in just a bit here, even though there's downtime in these seasons, that downtime isn't actual downtime for the players. They're still scrimming, they're still practicing, they're still going through the pressures of trade windows. Like, it's kind of grueling. So even though there's a break after every major, all the teams that aren't winning are now entering into a trade window, constant scrims, trying to figure out who they're it's super stressful. So I figured, okay, I should visually break that down. I'm a visual learner, and I hope you guys are too, because it makes things easier. But I broke down from a week-to-week basis visually what the RLCS is going to look like this season. So let's take a look and let's discuss it. So I went and color coordinated it, and for some reason, one of the months has 5 weeks in it. It's kind of weird. April has 5 weekends. Don't know how I feel about it. Kind of odd. This is what we got for the RLCS this season. So we are right now here. Almost here. We're right in between this. This is what happens on Friday. So on Friday, we've got the RLCS open qualifiers starting. We now have what's going to be open qualifiers. So teams are going to play in a double elimination tournament, try to make it as a top 16, top 8. You've got the top 16 teams for RLCS. By the time this video comes out, they'll probably be announced. From what we've heard, D-Rex said it, and some of the other players said it, that on Wednesday, we're going to find out what the top 16 teams are in the closed qualifier. Those top 16 teams are going to play in a Swiss stage. 8 of them will go to the main event. 8 of them will go to the closed qualifier, which will join the other teams that make it out of open qualifiers. Then 8 of those will then join for the main event. So that's what's going down this weekend. Literally starts in 4 days, 5 days. Kind of crazy. So in 4 or 5 days, we have the RLCS start. The week after that, NA Regional, EU Regional, NA Regional, EU Regional, NA Regional, EU Regional. And that's just the main regions. That's not including any of the expansion regions. It's not including OCE, SAM, APAC now that they're combined, MENA, SSA. All those regions aren't even shown on this schedule. So to think about how much Rocket League is going on over the course of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, right, is pretty crazy. So after that 6 weeks happens, that brings us to the middle of November. And from that point, you would say, okay, there's essentially 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a month break. We have a month off. But the mentality issue that I have is that it's not a month off. If you're a team that's competing, right, you're playing in the major. If you're a top 5, you're playing the major. And if you're not, if you're one of the teams that don't make the major, you're doing one of two things. You're either A, continuing to scrim, practice, build upon what you have. Maybe you take a little bit of a break. I would say like maybe 2 weeks. And then you go back to it. Or even worse, you're using that time, which is 2 months, 4 weeks here, and then 4 weeks for the transfer window. You're using that 2 months to scrim, practice, try out new players, which is, I mean, if you've seen this offseason, extremely stressful. It is so complicated to have this happen. I remember last season, on Christmas Day, V1 is trying to sign Beast Mode. When they're trying to enjoy holidays with their friends and family and stuff, they're trying to secure Beast Mode so they have a team for the next season. Like, nobody's really relaxing during that time. If anything, it's more stressful during that time for a lot of teams. Unless you're one of the select few that isn't. And even if you are one of the top 5 that made it to the major, there's no guarantee that you're also not looking for a transfer window. You're talking in that time, I would assume in between, like if I had to rough estimate, maybe you get a week. And that continues then immediately after. As soon as that transfer window's over, You're playing either through the open qualifiers or you're playing through the first regionals, and you're going back and forth yet again. In winter, instead of NA starting, EU starts because they do the inverse every other time. And then they go again. Another 6 weeks, 7 if you include open qualifier. So you're talking a break realistically. If you are not a team that makes it to the major, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks of downtime, like I mentioned. And then you go into open quals. And then you do it all over again. Regional 1, NA, EU, NA, EU. Or EU-NA, I should say. It goes the opposite. The only thing that's different about this season, which is a little bit I kind of like, is if you're a top 16 team in points, you get an invite into Regional 3. It is just the top 16 teams point based. That's who gets invited. There's no qualifiers, nothing. It's just like, if you're one of the best that season, go. So that happens again. You then get a 4-week break. The major happens, and then it goes into the spring transfer. Crazy thing, the transfer is only 2 weeks now instead of 4. They cut it in half, because what I assume and what my expectation is that if you are a team that is making a change from winter to spring, you're making a roster change going into the very last split. Things at the top should be pretty solidified. Also, things say Thursday to Monday, because even though it says weekend 2, Thursday is not part of the weekend. That's why I have it say for majors, Thursday to Monday, because it's a 4-day event. Even though Thursday is technically not the weekend, Friday is. Friday, Saturday, Sunday is the weekend. Anyway, so you're taking the spring transfer, and now what was a longer break is now cut even shorter. So you used to have all this time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have 2 more, 6, 7, and then you go back to it. So it's even shorter. You're talking, you now have a shorter break, and that is, my opinion, assuming, because if you are a team that is making a change right before the last split of the season, you're under a little bit more pressure, or on the opposite, things are pretty solidified. You can look at the spring transfer window of last year, and it didn't cause as much chaos or craziness as last time. There was a couple because of players who are coming in. I can tell you right now, winter split trade window is going to be freaking nuts this season. It's going to be so stressful. There's also some things that are happening in this time that are going to piss off a lot of people. I don't even want to get into it right now, but there's going to be some stuff that happens in this area that's going to make a lot of people really upset. You are going to see some things become consolidated, and I like the fact that some of the events have been simplified, specifically winter split going into round robin into single elim as compared to another double elim, which was absolutely terrible. But you're talking the break times get shorter and shorter, and then again, you're talking what was once 3 weeks break is now 2 weeks break until the major, and then immediately after another 3 weeks you have the world championship. So like, the breaks over the course of the season get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And then you get into the off season, and while the off season is technically 6 weeks, during like 6 weeks is not enough time. Like, I did the math. Out of the entire season, out of a 12-month cycle, 10.5 months is used for RLCS if you attend Worlds. If you don't attend Worlds, you have 3 to 4 months off, but those months off is spent doing trade windows, transfers, roster changes, all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know how much time you actually get to adjust, or how much time you actually get to yourself. And I'd be curious, because I do know there is some coaches and pros in chat. I'm curious on what your guys' opinion is on it. I'm really curious to hear on what you guys have to say when it comes to the downtime, or what actually goes into that transfer window, how early it happens, how much time do you actually have a chance to relax. I know Chrome, who originally was going to go on vacation, didn't get to. He just had to cancel it because of how quickly stuff turned around. And like the unknowingness of what these transfers are going to be, or everything like that, I think you're going to see something in the future potentially consistent with CSGO, because they also follow a circuit-based format. Like, their entire fan base, their entire staff was just like, hey, we can't keep doing this. Like, we need to have a dedicated 3 months where nothing happens. We have to. And again, I think, again, there's a lot of benefits to staying together. Like, there's a lot of benefits to staying together and building upon a team you already have. I can almost guarantee that teams like G2, etc., maybe V1, have had a much better offseason and a much more relaxing situation than some of the other ones, right? The only person I know that really talked about this in detail was Dignitas coach Nick, former Queso. Talks about all the teams, all the events, all that kind of stuff. Talks about Bubble's support system, how he would fix it. To me, none of that stuff matters. Obviously, the Bubble scene still needs love and support. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. He talks about the scheduling and the calendar stuff of when rosters and stuff were supposed to be announced, when everything was supposed to be locked. And it seems like there was still a lot of miscommunication. There was a lot of times where A lot of people just didn't hear about dates and stuff. They heard rumors and like tentative times, but nothing was really solidified. They didn't really find out. They're just like, hey, locks are supposed to be roughly around this time. I think the season's going to supposedly start around here. But then, even though with the roster lock being on the 26th, everything got pushed back. So locks were technically the 26th of September, not October. And I don't know if he's talking about the previous season or the current season. I'm jumping ahead in this to it longer, but like this is him, I think, talking all about last season and kind of the reflection of the previous season. But there is definitely some concerns about if they're going to keep going at this schedule, what does that mean for developing an amateur scene? Are they supposed to do tournaments in between these weeks? Is there even time for it? Is anybody going to watch it? Because this is just 2 regions, NA and EU. And I mentioned, what about all the other regions that are also going on at the same time? When are you going to fill in SSA getting support with roster spots? Now that APAC is only 1 region, does that help with some things and free up some stuff? Like, again, they talk about how this year's supposed to be a year of refinement. And I look at the season as a whole, and it's really easy to show the blocks when it's visually represented like this. It's how I learn better with visual, and it concerns me. Like, even this graphic that they have for the season, I think is a pretty good showing of like, okay, August ends in World Championship time. And it looks like there's a big space between September, but then you go right back at it in October. Like these people just played non-stop according to your own schedule for 11 months. And then you get September off and you go back at it. I don't know if I'm crazy and thinking about that, but that is too much. I know a lot of people are like craving Rocket League since the World Championship, but like I personally look at this and go, I can't believe we're starting up again. It is insane. It's absolutely insane. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy on this, but I'm looking at this and I'm just go, what is happening? Like we are flying through this. And solution wise, I don't know if there's a good answer. I really don't. I don't know if maybe you don't space out the majors as much. Again, I do agree to an extent, Nevermore, that this is their job, but these kids aren't working just 40-hour weeks. They're traveling internationally. They're away from home. They're 15, you know? I can't imagine the kids that are also going to school during this. I can't imagine, like, again, if it's your job, that's one thing, but we're talking 15, 16-year-old kids, and that's why there's a lot of reasons why I push towards an older age limit, because I do think it is complicated. I had a conversation last night with someone about this, talking about like, for me, and especially in the United States, high school is not about actually learning. It's about learning social constructs. It's about how to talk with people, learn about adversity, you know, handle different circumstances. Like you're learning a lot of social skills when you go to high school. And a lot of these kids are being pulled out of class to go to these events and compete and this and that. Like there's a lot of things that are happening that, and we've even seen like other countries and stuff where they can't attend due to school and are missing out on international events because they can't miss school as much as they do. Like there's a lot of factors that go into this, and it's like, how are we going to continue to refine this? And if this is the season of refinement, I look at it, I'm like, you guys basically copy and pasted last season. You made the winter split format better, but other than that, APAC as a region got merged and you reduced their prize pool. SSA still doesn't have any main support and still don't compete in any majors. MENA still only has 1 team for qualifications, and everything else is practically the same. The way that they qualify, the way tournaments are ran, the attendance of live events is identical. So for refinement, for a season that was focused on refinement, the only refining I saw was winter is less poop of a format. Round robin into double elim was not the play. You went round robin into single elim. Makes sense. So for refinement, I'm still left scratching my head being like, okay, this looks the same. I have a lot of concerns long term. Again, I'm not trying to be too critical, but I'm raising these concerns before the season even starts because they are most definitely there. And I hope it's something that isn't going to be used in your month-and-a-half downtime in between seasons. Like for Psyonix's sake, that's also a concern. Like if you guys are trying to plan the next season, you got a month-and-a-half turnaround time to do it. That's not a lot of time to make adjustments, to make changes, to make... And it doesn't surprise me that when I talk to organizations, when I talk to org owners, when I talk to players, when I talk to coaches, a lot of them are like, we don't know a lot of this information. We don't know when the schedule is going to be happening. We don't know when this stuff is coming out. We're finding out everything last minute when in reality it should be templated. It should be, yep, this. Here's all the information. It's copy paste. Here's an expectation that's being set. I guess my suggestion to wrap this all up, because that's what Brawl's asking as well, is there has to be some sort of way to speed up this process to provide a little bit more time. The concerns I have initially, trade windows are sometimes too short or not long enough overall. That's possible. I think those things should become more solidified, because I think if you do dedicated trade window times, yes, it is stressful for the teams that are involved, but it also the teams that are competing at the top have that downtime. I think there is ways to utilize a faster world championship or a faster turnaround for certain events. I think when you're doing back-to-back, you're looking at the difference between the spring major and the world championship. They could probably cut that down. And I think the difficulty is you're already seeing people who go, oh, majors are a month away. Like spring major is a month away from the world championship. Do I really go to the spring major if I'm just going to want to go to worlds in a week? Probably not. So I think there's ways to maybe fix that and space out some time there. I think there is also potential that you maybe reduce how many regionals there are altogether. Instead of doing 3 regionals, you take out an extra week for every split. That gives you another month and a half of time. Maybe you do some refinement that way. I don't know. I think these are all things that should be taken into consideration. I don't know if there's a good answer or a good solution. And maybe I'm just wrong and they got these pros and these players and everybody got to just suck it up. And that's just the way that it goes. But I look at Counter-Strike and I see their formats and stuff and I consider it and I go, okay, how are they able to have a dedicated 3 months downtime? Maybe we should look into that. Maybe we should see specifically on how they handle it and why they're able to get away with it. And I think a lot of it is due to third party. The open circuit system is all encompassing. It is not RLCS 123, RLCS 123, RLCS 123. It is the MSI Invitational, this Invitational, that Invitational, and everything is basically a dream hack. And that's how they run their circuits. They completely open up the format and they allocate points to certain tournaments. And by going to those tournaments, you obtain points. And then you can pick and choose which ones you go to. And if your team's feeling burnt out, you know what? We're going to sit out on this one. We're in a good place point-wise. We're going to mentally, relax and spend our free time the way that we need to. We'll go to the next one. And it allows people to pick and choose what they attend based on point allocation. But with qualifiers and invitationals and all that kind of stuff, it makes it tough. And I do agree, Popwall. CSGO, their events are usually longer. Their games are longer. But you can't tell me that the mental strain and the frustrations and the stress that comes from playing Rocket League, like a best of 5, best 7 at Rocket League is exhausting. Absolutely exhausting. Like the mental toll it takes. Not saying that Counter-Strike is any different, but even though their series are longer, Rocket League is still it's up there. Like we did a bunch of stuff with E-League in 2017, 2018, and they were doing like study of like how the human mind works and all that kind of stuff, and they did some like crazy sports science stuff, and like these kids are making reaction time as fast as hockey goalies in the NHL. And like the amount of stress and strain they're put on every split second is wild. So maybe they transition away from like an RLCS format into a tiered format. And I don't know what the answer is. And knowing Psyonix, they are very hands-on and want to be able to control start to finish. They want to be able to set the precedent and make sure that they are the end-all to be-all for all their stuff. I don't know what the answer is. And I do not envy the people having to figure it out. It's a lot of work, and I commend their team and what they're trying to do. And again, they're chipping away at some of this stuff, but this offseason felt, for being a season of refinement, a lot of the same. And there is a couple good things that they did change that I absolutely love. But overall, there is definitely some concerns. I expect if this continues for one more season, you're going to see a lot of people being like, guys, I can't keep doing this. I'm burnt out. So the same thing happened in Counter-Strike. And I think it's worth discussing. So that's what I got visually. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if you guys want me to post this graphic somewhere. Worst case, just take a screenshot. Otherwise, I can link it in the comments. But that is going to do it for today's video. I'm a little concerned about the season. And I encourage everybody who watches, pick a favorite team, tune into the big events. You know, if you got something going on the weekend, all of a sudden you tune in Championship Sunday, you watch the semis and the grand finals, and that's it. I don't blame you. It's going to be a lot of Rocket League again this offseason and this current season. It's going to be a lot. Everything we just went through. You guys thought you were crazy burnt out? Here we go again. And it all starts Friday. Oh, I need a nap. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's video. Appreciate y'all. Thanks for coming and tuning in and watching it. If you guys have any additional questions, curious on what your thoughts are about the season. Do you have any solutions that you think would be a good idea? Let me know in the comments down below. Again, these are meant to be a good conversation, a good discussion about ways to do things. And again, this stuff isn't going to change overnight. It's not something that's going to be fixed immediately, but I do think having these conversations, these discussions are important. It gets people thinking about ideas and solutions. And if we collectively put our minds together, maybe we can have an answer over time. But that's going to do today's video. Again, like, comment, subscribe, hit up the socials, all that kind of stuff. And we'll see you in the next video. Peace.